Hello and welcome everyone to round one with Thopter gifts. We're on the draw of this match, and this is a pretty clear keep here. We've got interaction into gifts and thirst. Like, I don't really know. Yeah, if path isn't good, we get got, but that's life. And my opponent opens on turn one cantrip. I'm playing Flooded Strand here, pretty obviously, but and my instinct was to save the fetch, but I should have figured out pretty quickly that my opponent's not a Blood Moon deck. All those decks play mono blue fetches so that you can fetch basic Island before Blood Moon. But I was like, oh, let's save the fetch and do stuff later. I figured it out, though, after the sleight of hand. I put my opponent on Storm after that. And against that deck, having an Engineered Explosives on 2 is super critical. Just having a preemptive answer to Pyromancer Ascension is just absolutely critical. Fortunately, we hit a land drop. Our life total is not super relevant against most of the blue-red combo decks. My opponent's the Kiln Fiend deck, apparently, not Storm. And the idea here is that I don't want to path that because my opponent's heavy on cards, light on mana. I'd rather use the explosives on it. And I'd rather use my mana this turn to Thirst. And I can just leave up the explosives as a deterrent for comboing. Here it's just pretty clear. Bin the Sword of the Meek, keep all the cards, make a bunch of mana, cast gifts eventually. And here I'm willing to save on life. My opponents hit their third land drop. They're going to be dealing 6 to me. I want to make their future combos have to go longer. It makes it so that any non-Kiln Fiend attack gets pretty hard to kill me in one shot. I don't necessarily just want to jam gifts to Elish here. My opponent is unlikely to have interactive spells, but they might have like Vapor Snag or Spell Pierce or something as like a random one of. I'd rather just kind of whittle away their threats and then eventually gifts to some Thopter kill. And also the thing is, even if I want to gifts, I want to wait till I have 6 mana so I can unburial with like double path protection in case of worst case scenarios. I'm fine just getting my 1-for-1 in here and calling it a day on that EE. My opponent wraps that turn up doing a little bit of nothing. Getting Kiln Fiend path to exiled. Kind of the goal is to get all the Kiln Fiends. It's really, really hard for the blue-red deck to kill you if they don't have Kiln Fiend, or one-shot kill you without Kiln Fiend, because they don't have any way to mass pump anything. Like even, at 17 life, even a Thing in the Ice, Mutagenic Growth, Team, or Battle Rage isn't lethal. Also, nice timely reinforcements against no creatures and more life. This turn is just going to be gifts for stuff. Thing in the Ice. Woo, a creature. Oh, wow, another creature. Guess what? Guess what? I have a 2-for-1 in my hand. Supreme Verdict's great. Fire off gifts. And we have options between, like, value or combo here. I go for arranging the combo. We have Thopter, Muddle, Talaria West Academy runes. So I can Muddle for a T-West or just have a Muddle as a counter spell here. Or sorry, Muddle for a Thopter Foundry, and then this sets up the guaranteed Academy runes. So it was kind of overkill. I could have slipped an interactive spell in here, but I like the idea of just having a Muddle in the stack. And my opponent gives me Muddle Talaria West. Oh, that was the other reason I wanted to get Talaria West, is because if I get Academy runes, I have Engineered Explosives loop, which I don't actually think my opponent is capable of beating. Just gonna keep killing all their stuff until they die. I mean, they have Bedlam Reveler, but they have like 1, maybe 2, and I can just kill that one copy. So here, pretty clear cut, just verdict with interaction up, and eventually win the game. It's not like a immediate sense, just no pressure whatsoever. Yep, opponent morphoses, gets stuff, does nothing. My life total's not super important, especially with the Timely in hand. I can take some chip shots. The second muddle finds the Foundry, because I still have the backup interaction. Play the Foundry with all sorts of interaction up. And now I'm just kind of waiting to hit a artifact and go off with all of this excess interaction. And this is one of the huge draws of this deck, is you have real eventuality in the way few other decks do. Your kill condition will override basically everything. And at the end of the day, like Academy Runes especially, you can play these very controlling games knowing that they will die at some point. And here, there's no need to spew the sorcery speed interaction. Just, this is an exact example of this inevitability. Just get back EE. Who cares if I blow up my own Foundry? I'll make my Thopter, do my thing. And if my opponent does anything, I'll just keep going off. See, yeah, here's the sword coming back. I'll get back the Thopter Foundry next turn. There's no urgency in the slightest. Yeah. I think it's possible I should have pathed that with the trigger on the stack, but it's not super urgent. Yeah, I should have pathed Bedlam Reveler with trigger on the stack in case my opponent drew like Vapor Snag specifically, and then they could bounce their own Bedlam Reveler, but if I did it with it on the stack, they couldn't. And my opponent concedes in response to me starting to go off, because from here, it's just straight up 100% over. Yeah. Yeah, I should have responded to the Bedlam Reveler trigger. I forget about that. And it's also something that comes up in standard with like Bristling Hydra. You just have to remember you can respond to those ETB triggers like that. Just not like package the spell together in your mind. Okay, I kept it pretty simple in sideboarding. Timely Reinforcements doesn't do a ton. My opponent's a pseudo combo deck, and the 1/1 dorks aren't going to matter against Battle Rage. And my opponent's creature sizing isn't really something that Timely handles. I cut down on Sword of Meek and Thopter Foundry because my goal is actually just to spam interaction and run my opponent out of stuff. And random 1/1 Thopter Dorcases don't really beat Thing in the Ice that well. They don't beat... I mean, they're fine against Thing in the Ice, but Temur Battle Rage kind of makes them less relevant. And then I cut a Gifts because I wanted to be a little smoother in terms of curve outs, just max interaction, and then I've got a lot of nonsense here. The do nothing, find more stuff slot, and cutting a gift seems fine. I kept Unburial Elish over going to Iona. Leaving my opponent with red lets them go, or naming blue cuts them off of a lot of their action, but at the same time they can also just like Bedlam Reveler, Temur Battle Rage, Kiln Fiend, and kill me. Whereas naming red, they can still Thing in the Ice. So it wasn't huge on Iona, whereas Elish can have an immediate kill spell effect, so I was down for that. I added a Dispel just for, fighting over some back and forth counter wars that might happen to some extent. Purge kills a creature or kills a Blood Moon. Blessed Alliance 100% kills a creature through Apostles, and Wrath of God is another removal spell. Just every single way I can kill a creature ended up in my deck. Elspeth doesn't kill creatures, sadly. I will do everything I can to put that card in my deck. Shocking. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. You just want to become more blue-white control deck because the creature combo decks can't really beat those decks. Okay, welcome to Game 2 of Thopter Gifts versus Blue-Red Kiln Fiend nonsense. This hand is great. Just does its thing and then kills some stuff. One thing worth noting is I have to be a little careful about the sideboard Blood Moons here. I don't have a basic Plains, so I need to be leaving up white sources when possible. So take my hit, blah, blah, blah. Take as little damage as possible. And I do want to make a comment on this. I've gone down this road, actually. The first time I saw the Thopter Gifts control deck ever was Worlds 2009, where I lost in the first round of the extended portion to a player who ended up actually 6-0ing and top 8ing with it. And I was like, oh, I'll just board in Tormod's Crypt. No, it doesn't work. What happens is they have Thopter Sword, and then they sack an artifact, and then you crack your Tormod's Crypt, and they just sack another artifact in response and leave the Thopter Sword in play, and then you die, and it's horrible. This is not going to do enough. I just have to, it forces me to jump through a few more hoops, and my opponent has mulliganed and committed an extra card to the battlefield just to sit around and do nothing. So that makes me pretty happy to see. So here, I kind of just want to sit around. I can afford taking chip shots off of this Swift Spear because I have, the way I'm going to lose this game is to Blood Moon, not to 1 damage a turn. And yeah, not even 5 damage in one shot is scary. I still have a lot of time, even accounting for like double bolt, I probably got 4 more turns of Swiss Spear attacks. I don't figure this out next turn, but I should have figured this out now. I'm actually supposed to EOT kill the Swiss Spear because my opponent's missed a land drop, because I can then transmute for an out to Blood Moon. I can get, I'm supposed to kill the Swiss Spear and then transmute Muddle for Talisman of Progress. Then I have an out to Blood Moon and also an additional artifact to fuel my Thopter Sword through Relic. But I didn't figure that out that turn. And I'm just kind of in the same position as I was again. Again, don't care about the damage. And this is where I just put it all together. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what's happening. My opponent Apostle's Blessings, I have the Dispel. They bolt me in response for whatever reason just to resolve it. Card in my graveyard, sure. One thing to note with Relic, I do need to have an additional card in my graveyard when I start going off so they can't double shot there. Also worth noting, because I have Sphere and Ring, I can actually just KO the Relic without fear, because I still have a backup answer for a Blood Moon. Yeah, just like, probably want to kill that Kiln Fiend. Kind of the scariest card of my opponent's deck. Really the only one that matters here. And I'm pretty low on life, so I don't especially want to risk playing that land untapped and going to 6. Saving the D-Sphere because I might take out multiple things later. My opponent taps out and plays another Relic, I guess, is the other thing. It's unlikely that the Exile 2 thing's part of Detention Sphere comes up, but my mana's so perfect that I don't really care that much. Yep, stuff's getting exiled, and there's that second Relic I was talking about. Lead on Serum Visions. I'm not going to lead on Talisman. Just doesn't do anything. There's the basic planes, so I'm completely insulated against Blood Moon. And I'm back to being able to attack my opponent's relics if I want to. I can one of my goals might be to get Engineered Explosives at this point so I can clear both relics in one shot. And we left the gifts on top, shipped the bonus Foundry because I didn't really care about it. And here I can Talisman, leaving up my Muddle as protection for whatever nonsense my opponent does. Great, you're still exiling my graveyard. I will eventually gifts for stuff. My opponent spews the relic to actually try and do something. And now I'm back into position to just close out the game. Here's where, now that it's a single relic I'm trying to attack with Detention Sphere, it gets pretty easy. My opponent lets me do that instead of drawing the card, which has to be an F6 mistake due to the fact they're running low on time. And this Muddle turns into Blessed Alliance as my bonus piece of interaction to kind of lock things out. So there's no fear of getting comboed. I'm comboing out my opponent. I have a backup gifts to go over the top if everything goes right or wrong for my opponent, depending on how you want to view it. And things are pretty solidly over by now. It's also extremely difficult for my opponent to actually get an attack in that turn. With 3 cards in hand, casting 4 spells in a turn is really difficult. So they play some stuff. I combo for a small amount, start getting out of range. And again, we see the whole I have eventuality thing start to come into effect. Interesting that I didn't fire that. Oh, the reason I didn't fire that there is my opponent only has 1 attacker. So they can either... basically, if they flip the thing, the Kiln Fiend's going to get bounced. And if they just attack with the Kiln Fiend, I can also Blessed Alliance that. This is a kind of irrelevant Shattering Spree, taking out all the things I was going to EE away anyways, so how lucky. I just make a bunch of Thopters, do some stuff. This deck, once you really lock things up, it's definitely a true control deck in Modern, which is not something people are used to seeing. So, I don't know why I didn't... Oh, I wanted to leave up Blessed Alliance. That's why I didn't turn more things into Thopters. I just get to attack with everything. It's kind of cool that the explosives versus Thing in the Ice thing works in my favor now with the Shadows over Innistrad rules. It preserves the 2 converted mana costs when it transforms instead of going to 0. So I can just leave up the EE, blow up the world, and yeah. My opponent concedes under lethal pressure and nothing, and I'm going to draw a million cards. And this matchup seems, like I said, absolutely atrocious because I am a heavily interactive deck, and I guess the combo kind of does something. I don't know. I'm not very impressed with the Blue-Red Kiln Fiend deck. It feels very, very, very fragile and not as inherently powerful as Infect. You're not turn 2ing your opponent ever. And your turn 3s all revolve around casting specifically Kiln Fiend then on tapping, which is a little sketchy. It's a lot better to have like Noble Hierarch with a mana up to protect your 1-drop, or Death Shadow just be a 5/5 or whatever.